One of their biggest reasons is the control that they have over claims, because in traditional insurance, it's very rare that the employer has any say or has even talks to the adjuster, much less gets to talk to the legal team or attend a deposition or have any control over how that claim is settled. Welcome to the Self-Insurance Podcast, brought to you by CRMBC. Every week, we're interviewing industry experts, restaurant operators, and brokers to talk about the world of workers' comp self-insurance in California. My name is Stanley, and I'm the CEO of CRMBC, California's only restaurant workers' comp self-insured group. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Randy Bugg, Vice President of Pacific Claims Management, who is also our third-party administrator. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into claims and what your experience has been in claims.
Well, I got into claims back in the early 90s. It was about 1992. I'm a second generation claims professional. My mother was, in fact, a claims adjuster starting in the 1970s. And, you either entered into the business because you knew somebody, and that's how I got in. So I started with a little locally owned TPA, third-party administrator here. Way back then, handling self-insured client. That's my story.
And in a self-insured group, some people might not understand how that works. So in a self-insured group, there's a bunch of restaurant owners who come together who decide to self-insure their workers' comp, in our instance. And we have a board of trustees, and I'm the chair of the board and the CEO of the company. But then we outsource all of the different aspects. So we have an administrator, that's Path Alliance. We've got risk and loss prevention team that helps with that part of it. And then you guys are our third-party administrator, which is what TPA stands for. Give us the big picture of what is a TPA and why is it important?
Well, really, the TPA is the group's claims department. If you think about traditional insurance, there's always different departments: underwriting, loss control, and claim. And really, it's our job as a third party acting on behalf of the group to make sure that the group is compliant with all of the various laws and regulations that govern the claim system here in the state of California from a workers' comp standpoint.
And it's really a critical piece of the insurance program because how claims are handled impacts everything. So a lot of restaurant operators, the reason that they choose to self-insure their work comp, one of their biggest reasons is the control that they have over claims, because in traditional insurance, it's very rare that the employer has any say or has even talks to the adjuster, much less gets to talk to the legal team or attend a deposition or have any control over how that claim is settled. And then years down the road, they find out that their rates went up because something was handled in a way that they didn't have any say in. You guys are TPAs specifically for self-insured groups, and so you work more one-on-one with the employers. Tell us a little bit about that philosophy and how that works for you.
Yeah, well, and I've worked in both the third-party administrator environment and carrier environment. And the biggest difference with the third-party administrator, especially with the group and self-insurance, is we really are working on behalf of the employer. We are an extension of the employer, and those are the interests that we have alignment in. Now, with carrier, you're right. When you sign that policy contract, you're giving up your rights over the claim, and the carrier gets to dispose of that claim however they see fit, whatever best benefits them. With a third-party administrator, it is exactly the opposite. We handle claims in the interest of the employer and what the best outcome for the employer and their injured worker actually are.
And you guys have some unique philosophies with regard to how you handle being our TPA, and it's some of the things that was most attractive to us. But one of them is having a specific adjuster assigned to a specific member, as opposed to in other groups, sometimes other traditional insurance, especially, one member could have 12 different adjusters that work on their claims. Tell us why you choose to do it that way.
Well, because it's really about forming a bond, a relationship. Best outcomes, I think, are achieved by really gaining knowledge, intimate knowledge of the employer and the employer to the claims adjuster over time. And so you really want to establish that continuity and make sure that, one, the adjuster is aware of what the employer wants for their employee, and that basically the personality of the adjuster is a match for the employer. And you can only really establish that by having that continuous type of relationship.
And in addition to that, you have, I think every one of your adjusters, if I'm not mistaken, is also bilingual.
Yes, that's correct. That has been a big focus of ours since we began Pacific Claims Management because, that's the world that we live in and we want to be able to connect culturally with the employee in that workforce.
And you guys have a specific philosophy about the first point of contact, which makes a huge difference that a lot of restaurant owners might not be aware. Because in the traditional insurance market, there's sometimes a propensity to not tell the traditional insurer that there's a possible claim coming because they're worried about what that's going to do to their underwriting or going to do to their XMOD. And we're the exact opposite. We want to know immediately, even if there's a potential for a claim to happen, and we don't penalize people for that. We actually want that to happen because then we can get in sooner, get in front of the injured employee. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, there's a few things. We really want to take the surprises out of the claims process for everyone. That includes the employer and obviously the injured worker. And so when we get a report of a claim, there are times where the employer may not be aware of it. What our philosophy is here, and what I tell the staff here often is we want to make sure that we reach out to everyone so they know what's going on, so that they know that we've got the claim. And think of this from the standpoint of if you were to have a car accident or if your home were to, God forbid, catch on fire, you would certainly want to hear from the insurance company quickly. You'd want to hear some voice on the other end of the line saying, hey, you know what? We have your claim and this is what the process is going to be, and just get your information and make sure that they're aware of the fact that they're going to be taken care of. So that immediate contact, that happening within 24 hours really lends itself to that kind of assurance, really sets up the relationship going forward through the claims process.
Walk us through the claims process right from the beginning. What's the first thing that happens? How does it get on your radar? So let's walk through. Ideally, if it was all handled the best way possible, how would a claim get to you and how would it be handled?
Yeah, well, all of our clients have access to our online reporting portal. So no matter what time of day a claim occurs, they're able to get it into our system, and immediately our staff gets notice that a new claim has been reported. That includes that dedicated adjuster that the member is going to get to know over time. And then we reach out. We hit the ground running. Like I say, with that 3-point contact, that's contact the employer, the injured worker, the medical provider, making sure that they have our information and we have theirs. And then within 24 hours of the completion of that initial contact, the adjuster then reaches out and says, hey, I'm your adjuster. My name is, Jennifer, and here's some information, about me and what I need from you in order to fully process your claim. So right from the get-go, that is the ideal, path that a new claim would take. Sometimes we do get notice from an attorney. Sometimes they'll file what we call an application with the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, and that'll be not only our first notice, but the first notice from the employer. We encourage the employer to report those in the same fashion, only because there will be certain information that's missing from the application that the employer will have, but we can walk them through that process. And if necessary, we can even input the claim on their behalf into our system because we have it first.
So what happens when the first report that we get is that the injured worker has already contacted an attorney?
Well, here we do a couple of things. First off, like I say, we reach out to the employer, especially if the employer was never aware that anything had occurred. We delay the claim. We send a notice of delay. We request evidence to support the allegations that are contained in the application. We reach out to their attorney and we do that immediately. Oftentimes, we never receive a response. Any concerns that the employer member may have, we thoroughly investigate. We'll use private investigators. We'll take statements. We'll do various things, including writing letters and making phone calls to the physician if we're aware of a physician, just to make sure that we have the full story.
And speaking of which, in addition to bringing in the intake of the claim and what we deal with when they're litigated, it's our philosophy across the board that if a worker is injured, we first and foremost take care of the injured worker. However, there's a lot of times where there's fraud or there's someone trying to game the system. And so you touched briefly on hiring private investigators and some of those other things that we do. Can you talk a little bit more about your philosophy with regard to that?
So we have a carrier level SIU, Special Investigation Unit program here. That was designed when we first started claims management. And what that means is basically all of our special investigation practices are in compliance or on par with any of the large carriers out there with respect to the DOI, Department of Insurance requirement. So anytime that we assign a private investigator or we take statements or we do any of those things, all of those reports immediately go to our SIU team, and they're evaluated for potential fraud and filing of the FD1 with the district attorney's office and the Department of Insurance 100% of the time.
And that's unique to your TPA. Can you tell us some of your war stories? I know you can't break confidentiality, but I know you've seen some crazy stuff. Can you tell us a story that you remember of where you had a private investigator and you were able to save money for a group or save money for a restaurant owner?
Well, we actually had a lady who was on long-term disability, collecting temporary disability. And what we'll do is we'll run a social media check usually if we suspect that they might be malingering. Their complaints aren't really matching up with the doctor's report and some of the diagnostics that we're getting. And so we're like, hey, we need to check this out. Well, we found her, she was doing Spartan races and posting about it on Facebook. And our investigator actually participated in the Spartan race and filmed her the entire time. They both won medals. They were on the podium with their medals and everything else. And we were obviously able to close that claim down. Unfortunately, a lot of fraud referrals with the district attorney and the DOI come down to manpower. Even where they may choose not to prosecute for some reason, you can still use those tools and those discoveries to shut down an otherwise very expensive claim.
Yeah, we've had some pretty funny stories over the years of fraud, and even sometimes fraud among lawyers and among doctors. And it's usually the TPA that first alerts us that those issues are going on. Are there any other instances war stories you'd like to share with us?
I think one of the things you mentioned, professional fraud, and I always tell people that it's very difficult to catch the attorney or the doctor. And really, I think one of the areas that we do well in is looking at trend. And if we have a certain attorney firm that's referring to a certain doctor doing things like that, and we suspect that maybe there's some capping or something like that going on, that's another area that will activate our SIU team and investigate.
Thank you, Randy, for being here today. And thank you for enlightening us on what you guys do and your philosophy for your TPA. I look forward to having you back to dive deeper into some of these topics, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Randy. Thank you for joining us for the Self-Insurance Podcast, brought to you by CRMBC. If there's a topic you'd like to learn more about, or if you have any questions, just email us at info@crmbc.com. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and join us again next week for more tips on self-insurance.